Thank you, Don. Bob?
Standardized tests assume that you've got the same country from coast to coast. It's a different culture in East Texas, in South Florida, in the south side of Chicago, in New England, here in Alaska, and certainly in our rural communities. Why are we trying to force our rural Alaskans to learn the values that they won't need or use? It's far more important to learn subsistence lifestyles, and they can be educated according to that. That's for us to decide. It's for their local school district. It's for our state to decide. When we have a standardized test, my goodness, Don Young is correct. I see it. They teach to the test. They're scared to death of it. And they're scared to death that it's going to reflect on the school and the faculty and you administrators. In fact, I'll bring up the fact that poor Mark and Superintendent Como issued a letter recently. They're scared of having rural Alaskans come into Anchorage schools. And I can't blame them because they're scared of the fact that the test scores will be lowered. And of course, the liberal response is to throw money at it. Keep them in the rural villages. Maybe they want to move to the cities. I don't care. But so what if the tests go down? That's going to happen. But a bureaucrat in Washington doesn't understand that. Do you know what Cicero said about bureaucrats? The budget, he says, a bureaucrat is the most despicable of men, though he's needed as vultures are needed. But one hardly admires vultures from bureaucrats, which bureaucrats so strangely resemble. I have yet to meet a bureaucrat who was not petty, dull, witless, crafty, or stupid, an oppressor or a thief, a holder of authority in which he delights as a boy delights in possessing a vicious dog. That was 2,500 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, you want the Department of Education? You got it, thanks to the Democratic and Republican Party, which is giving you standardized tests. I stand for states' rights and freedom, and I hope I won your vote today.
Thank you, Bob. Liz?
Senator Stevens does not support a system that requires teaching to the test. He supports having teachers and principals and school districts able to determine how they should be evaluating students. And that could be from a combination of teacher assessments, testing that is appropriate to the content of the subject being taught, with the idea in mind of preparing that student for a productive life in a very competitive world. He does believe in testing because there are objective measures that need to be displayed in order to, for example, go on to higher education. But the means of doing that should be left up to individual schools, teachers, and school districts.
Thank you, Liz. Mark?
Thank you very much. Bob, I just want to clarify something here. We are not, Carol Coleman and I, not scared about the impact coming in from rural Alaska. We just know it's a reality with 500 students coming in less than 30 days. It's an issue we have to deal with, and we have to recognize that as an impact across the state. So we are very motivated to figure out how to ensure that young people have access to education, housing, other services that will be necessary as they move in from rural Alaska. But it's an interesting question because, Congressman, I'm probably one of those students. I was not a big fan of testing, I'll tell you that as a student. I probably would have been many times not very successful. And I look at it this way. There are types of testing you can do toward content. I was a peer teacher when I was going to Stellar Secondary. I taught photography and personal finance. And we designed programs to evaluate the end product, how they could be successful. With the area of personal finance, we actually gave them a budget and worked through the budget process to see if they could actually balance their checkbook, run a household budget, and do a few other things. That was, to me, a great way to see success. One thing we don't do enough of, when a youngster graduates from high school, we don't do any post-testing to see what happened 2-3 years later in their life. That to me is an interesting data point, because one thing you can tell a successful person, if they're contributing back to their community, they have a successful life in whatever it might be, whatever job they are involved in, or if they have a family life, whatever it is. We never, once they graduate from high school, that's it, and we move on to the next group. It'd be an interesting study to see the success rate of folks over the long haul, because I think that's a great way to see is our education system working. But I do believe that when you do have testing, it should be relevant to the topic and the subject matter. And this is why, with No Child Left Behind, I have a major problem. When you start standardizing everything, that one size fits all, the likelihood is you will have problems with the ability to test. And you will have now educators teaching to the test in order for those kids to be successful, so the data points are successful, so their funding gets funded. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. The real goal is to allow opportunity for young people to be successful with their education.
That was the last question, and now each candidate will have 1 minute for any closing and final thoughts, and we'll start with Bob.
Oh, I thought you said it was the last question. I misunderstood you.
That was the last question.
Oh, that was the last question. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm suffering from a blatant, naked, obvious media blackout. I am offering you authentic change. Forget the constitutional issues for a minute. Think of the economic ones. We're at the cracking point. Don't be fooled by the Wall Street going up one day, down the next. We cannot continue on this reckless binge. Both parties are like an alcoholic who thinks that just one more bottle of whiskey will cure their drunkenness. They are offering you nothing but more programs, more government control, more money. And if they don't tax you, they're going to inflate us. And that destroys our savings and our pension. I saw a kid in my classroom. I'm going up, Mr. Bird, miss you tomorrow. I said, what for? I'm going to take my permanent fund and spend it. Yeah, there's no incentive to save anymore. And that's because of inflation. It's as much an evil as overtaxation. I offer you change, and it'll be painful, but it's change.
Thank you. Liz?
Yes, on behalf of Senator Stevens, again, thank all of you so very much and your colleagues for the wonderful job that you're doing in this most critical task of educating our young people. Senator Stevens has done everything he can to bring you resources you need, including creating the Universal Services Fund to help make internet connectivity an affordable reality in rural parts of Alaska. He's well aware of the issues that are raised by in-migration and the strain it puts on the city schools, and he's also well aware of the huge costs that many of the rural schools are suffering with huge increases in fuel costs. He's looking, as we speak, for solutions to those things and hopes to be able to help out on both of those.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you very much, and hopefully you got a sense of where we stand on the issues, and it is an important election. As I said at the beginning, this will be a critical election for you to make a decision on where we want to go in the next 30, 40 years as a state. Education, all of us support education. You'll always hear that, but it's just a different approach. I think Washington has put so much burden on local governments and local communities. We're now paying for the price of some of their mandates. When you think of the $70 billion gap when No Child Left Behind Act was put forward, or you think of Head Start, when I was up in Fairbanks a couple days ago, and the individual there was talking about how they have 90 people waiting to get service through Head Start program. They have flat funded it. There are many needs we have, and I think what we need back in Washington is a different view, a different approach. I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, we are going to work to get results, as I've done as mayor, as an assembly member. I look at the issues and we work towards solutions, no matter where you stand in the political arena, because that's what we need more than ever before in Washington, D.C. I would be honored to receive your vote on November 4th. Take a look at my webpage, begich.com, for more information. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Don?
Thank you, and first I'd like to acknowledge Liz. It's difficult what she just did. She did a great job. I want to admire her for that. I want to give her a hand, all right? I'm disappointed my opponent's not here. I sort of feel like Diane Benson now. She always accused me of not debating her. So I want to know, and I hope he hears this too, because this will be the third one he hasn't showed up. And I don't particularly like that, because we want to talk about education. I'm an educator. I'm a person who got the job done. And how many in this room have been back to Washington, D.C. to see me? Raise your hand. Raise your hands. Get them up there. Every time you get to see me. Every time my wife will either take you to lunch or give you a cookie. And as an educator, I believe in what you're doing And so I ask you for your vote. I've done the job, I'm still enthusiastic about it, I got the fire in the belly, as I said, what do you mean, been eating, those peppers? No, I want to serve you. I want to educate my children, I want my 14 grandkids educated. I want it done for the state of Alaska.
Thank you. That concludes our program. If we could please just give the candidates a round of applause.
What? You gonna say that?